Daled, yeah? Huh? What do you say?
Before all the oilmas, before Adam Kadmon, looks like there is a oilmas ha'ensof, which is Elapus Mamish, which is looks like the universe of Ensof.
It's a very good question. He's saying if it's called oilmas, how is it Ein Sof? By definition, it's a contradiction. Oilmas Ein Sof, the worlds of infinity. Or to put it differently, the word oilam comes from the word helam, which means concealment. So I'll tell you, so I asked this question many years ago from Rabbi Yoel Khan. So I'll tell you his answer. You'll do with it what you want. He said, pre-symptom, the question was, if it's post-symptom, so it's an olam, it's a world, what's pshat olam is ha'ein sof, a world of infinity. If it's a world, it's already some type of consciousness, structure, some concealment.
Some kind of form of space and time, perhaps.
Spiritual space and time. So he said that Arizal's language in Eitz Chaim is that pre-tzimtzum, lahaya makom, that's his expression, lahaya makom la'midas ha'olamus. There was no space for the worlds. What does it mean there was no space? As we said a few shiurim ago, doesn't mean there was no physical space. That too. If I'm sitting in this chair, you can't occupy this chair because it's already taken. The Ein Sof already took up everything, conceptually and physically. But he means much more than that. There was no conceptual space. Like if somebody in yeshiva says a svara, says an idea, right? And somebody says in Yiddish, "Azas svara hat kein ort nicht." This idea has no place. This idea has no place. What does it mean? It has no place. There's no chair for it, and there's no chair. There's no stender for it. Has no place means it doesn't exist. It's foolish. It's an impossibility. It has no place in the universe. In the universe of logic, in the universe of stupidity, it has a place. But in the universe of logic, there's no place for it because it's not a possibility. It's ridiculous. It's absurd. It's not what it means. It doesn't make sense, right? It's folly, etc. So Narizal says, "Lahaya makom lamidas ha'olamus." He doesn't only mean, in reality, there was no place. God is, what does Hashem is here, Hashem is there, Hashem is everywhere. So there's no space. Where do I come in if Hashem is everywhere? So there had to be a tzimtzum. He had to, so to speak, leave the room so I could come in. That's more like in terms of, like in reality, there's no space because he's here. But that's already a post-tzimtzum metaphor. It's like we're competing, he's here, I'm here, you're here, I'm here, who's sitting on the chair? It's already, we're using a language that really doesn't have. So Lahaya Makam really is much more subtle. It means pre-tzimtzum, if you would talk about the world, nobody would understand what you're talking about. It would be like, the vocabulary creates reality. There was no vocabulary for it because the concept could not be understood.
You're saying there was no vocabulary for space and
for space, time. It's not like God is here, so you're not here. No, that's already much. That's already in a much lower paradigm. The vocabulary was not here. Yes. What didn't exist? The concept before the existence is the concept of existence. In other words, you wouldn't even relate to anything outside of Ein Sof. What's a little metaphor for that? If somebody comes into the yeshiva and doesn't say a wrong idea, rather he says, I came up with a brilliant revelation last night, and that is that 9 plus 9 equals pink. Right? Or equals a chair. 9 plus 9 equals coffee. You're not arguing. No, it's not what Rashi means. It's not what the Gemara means. 9 plus 9 doesn't equal pink. You're gonna ask other questions. What this person needs? Why? It's not in the realm of logic. If you tell me 9 plus 9 equals 17, okay, I'll tell you Pasha made a mistake. Let me do the calculations with you, right? If you tell me 100 times 100, or even more complicated mathematical equations, sometimes fine, I made a mistake.
You can identify the yeshiva where they came.
You identify the logic and you identify the flaw. 9 plus 9, very good. 9 plus 9 equals pink. Okay. So he says like this. Pre-symptom, to speak about the oilamas, is 9 plus 9 equals pink. Post-symptom, in the higher realities, to talk about the oilamas, is 9 plus 9 equals 17. You understand? The concept, the vocabulary is there. That's what it means an empty space was created. There's a new vocabulary. L'poyel, there's Ein Sof. In Asiya, in our world, 9 plus 9 is taka 17. 9 plus 9 is pink, 9 plus 9 is 17. The more stupid you are, I'm saying in our world, yeah, it taka works. You don't see Ein Sof. In the higher worlds, in Olam is Ein Sof, post-symptom, they know Ein Sof, they feel Ein Sof, but it's already called the world. To speak about the world is like 9 plus 9 equals 17. In other words, it's the way Ein Sof is felt within a reality where you can understand time and space. But you know that the truth is that it's infinite. But there's already a vocabulary that you can discuss. You can discuss this way, you can discuss that way.
The interesting that the Rebbe is using the word, the world.
Olam is Ein Sof, yeah.
And you would think that the world was created post-symptom. But he's using...
Right, so already even in post-symptom you have the gilui of Ein Sof, but it's in a post-symptom reality, hence it's called Olam. Yeah. So that's also in post-symptom there's Boina Olam is Machrivon, that's Olam Atayu, and then Olam Atikun is Atzilus is built on that. Just to clarify that there is a lashon in the Maamer. There is a lashon in the Maamer on page Yud Beis. He does quote from the original Basi Lagani. Olam is ha'ein sof shelifnei hatzimtzum, which is quite a chiddush to use the word olam is ha'ein sof lifnei hatzimtzum. The word to use the word olam, world, pre-tzimtzum. I'm just saying there is that expression. Even though in the explanation, generally, Olam is Ein Sof, he's seeing as post-symptom, which is Ak, and then Atzilus, and then Biyah. I guess on, the more subtle levels, even in pre-symptom, the way infinity imagines finiteness, perhaps, is the way the world is called Ein Sof Lifnei Tzimtzum, the way infinity imagines finiteness, but it's all an expression of infinity, but it's already the source for something that one day will be finite. When you imagine something, it's still inside of you, but it becomes a source for something else. Just like in Atzilus, there's Kalim. Over there, it's not limited, but it becomes a source for the limitedness of Biyah. So maybe on higher levels, right, the Ein Sof Lifnei Tzimtzum can become a source for Olamus. It first has to exist in the source before it emerges, and it's nanim dak min hadak, subtle. But I'm going to go back, not to ruin the idea that all of this is relevant, the way it's experienced in a person. As we will see, the neshamas Oilamus, Neshamas, Elikus, the Neshama is the one that holds on to all their extremes and won't give up. Consciousness won't give up on the two polar opposites of Elikus and Oilamus. It's the interlacing link, right? It's the fusing between the two. And that's why paradox is so essential to consciousness.
Where is Rabbi in this?
You're with us? That's not psychology, that's chassidus.
No, it's fine. It's not coming.
In body, he's here.
It's not coming. No, so the last thing. You talk very well. I didn't have it. What consciousness is the paradox?
Consciousness is a breach between infinity and
We described here, I said that most of history, people are struggling, what's consciousness? It's so elusive. We know it's there. There are people who say it's not there, you're just a machine. Fine. But okay, if you want to believe that, gesundheit, it's not it's not our discussion today. But everybody knows there's consciousness, right? Just like people know there's choice, they know there's consciousness. Even though we can argue a whole day there is, it's not, it's an illusion, it's not. But what is this? What is this? It's so elusive. It's so elusive. And what's the difference between animal consciousness and human consciousness? It's also, we know there's a quantum leap there. We know there's something that I'm dealing with that the chimpanzee is not dealing with, that the rat is not dealing with, the elephant, with all respect to the brilliance of animals and the sensitivity of animals and the spirituality of animals and the beauty of animals and the emotions of animals. So that's what the Baal Shem Tov was describing, that in every reality there's Oilamus, Neshamas, and Elikus. Oilamus is one realm of reality. It includes a lot, but it's one realm. Elikus is, so to speak, another realm of reality. It's everything, but it's a realm of reality. And the Neshamas is the experience of all of it. And in the language of this Maamer, it's Tachtiyim, Shniyim, Shlishim of the Teva. And it's Oilamus Ha'ein Soif, which is Elikus Mamash. And then there's Neshamas, which is Elikus. And then there's Oilamus, which are worlds. And in the language of Kabbalah, of the Ramaz, it's Adam Kadmon, or Oilamus Ha'ein Soif after the Symptom. And then you have Atzilus, where there's Kalim. And then you have Bri Yitzira Asiya, where there's period, where there's separation. So I was describing that this definition of consciousness as Kalim, Neshamas come from Kalim, is really the undefined becoming defined. That's consciousness. Consciousness is the aspiration to define the undefined, to experience the infinite, to experience the undefined. If consciousness would not be elusive, it would not be consciousness. That's what it is. It's trying to make sense, trying to bring into experience something that's inexperiential, something that's undefined states of reality to become reality, to be able to grasp. Because consciousness is an experience. Consciousness is some Metzias. It's Metzias. It's Kalim. There's some ego. Not a bad ego, but there's some ego. There's some tfisa. That's what Kalim are. Kalim are the way the Ein Sof is channeled through experience. Chachma, Bina, Das, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes. So consciousness is really the bridge between the infinite and the finite, between the undefined and the defined. And that's its incredible quality. Does any of this resonate with anybody?
Is person able to differentiate and connect?
You with us? Huh?
For the Neshama, the Maisa, are we able to differentiate and connect to both?
Yeah, that's what a neshama is.
How can we,
So the Baal Shem Tov said in every word you have these three things: Oilamus, Neshamas, and Elikus. Tzoyer Tasala Teva means open up the light, let the light come into the word. In other words, experience it on a level of Neshamas, Oilamus, Elikus.
can you really understand it? Like the same teaching blind people, they're obviously blind. And you're teaching them these such things like colors, this and that. So it's something like this now? I can't really understand it.
If we let go of everything, we can more than understand it, we can experience it. If we let go. The hardest part is not understanding, the hardest part is letting go. And then you know already, it's there, it's who I am. The letting go is the hardest part. Whenever I'm having a conversation with somebody, the Baal Shem Tov would ask the first question: are we talking, on which frequency are we talking? We're talking the frequency of Oilamus, Neshamas, or Elikus. Just answer that question and then we can move on.
in mathematics there is a concept.
It's very good for marriages, by the way. You sit down with your spouse to talk. So which frequency are we on? Are we in the frequency of Oilamus? Okay. Neshamas or Elikus? Oh, that's a good question. That's a good question. If they ask the marriage therapists, what's the language of neshamas, what's the language of ilamas, what's the language of elikus? Huh? Because if I'm talking ilamas and she's talking neshamas, yeah, you're on one level of the teva, she's on another level of the teva, which is normal, because animals were on one level and humans were on another level, and the garbage was on another level. Right? You know what Rashi says, yeah? The zevel, because that's really, it's completely different frequencies. What's the consciousness of the animal? What's the consciousness of the human being? What's the consciousness of the garbage? But the Baal Shem Tov says you have to connect the three frequencies. You have to bring them together. You have to open up a light to Olamus, that it should be able to connect to Neshamas, through which it connects with Elikus. And the Neshama is at the vortex of it. The neshama is the sulam mutzav artzav v'roishim agia hashamayma, the ladder that stands on the ground and its head reaches heaven, right? V'hinei malachi elakim olam v'yardim ba. Even the malachim go up and down, as we'll see. That's neshama. Letting go of the ego. Letting go of the ego that blocks reality. Not letting go of the ego that. In the sense that you become a shmata, like we spoke last time. Yeah.
Shmata, you also ego. I'm such a shmata. It's not like different ego.
You're right.
It's maybe big ego.
You're right. You can't heal ego with ego. You can't heal ego with ego because you're replacing problem 1 with problem 2. That's true. You can only heal ego with Ein Sof. That's true. That's important. We try to heal ego with ego. One ego is not working, I'll bring in another ego. But I'm creating the first problem again. It's very vulnerable. It may last for a few months, but it doesn't have the power. You have to heal with something that transcends the problem. Make sense?
It's actually interesting. In mathematics, there is a concept called complex numbers.
Complex numbers, yeah.
Complex numbers, they don't exist.
Right.
Because we know what the real numbers are, right? Decimal numbers, real numbers,
Yeah.
integer numbers. But complex numbers were invented. They're imaginary numbers.
Right.
But they were invented to actually explain concepts in physics in a much simpler place. So basically, it's a language that
Wow.
suddenly we can express electricity and many other civil engineering issues in a simple way. Although those numbers in reality don't exist. It's a really mental bridge.
Why are you mentioning that?
Because it's a bridge between infinity
So you're saying complex numbers in mathematics, not that the numbers exist. It's a vocabulary created to be able to define and articulate transcendent or abstract ideas.
Exactly. You see it, so you said it more beautiful than I.
Without knowing what I was saying. Without knowing what I was saying.
So basically, it's an imaginary number.
9 plus 9 is big?
No, I in the power of 2 is equal minus 1. So you know that anything in the power of 2 will be a positive number.
Right.
But I in the power of 2 is minus 1. But that equation, that imaginary number suddenly opens up for you a world to express yourself in a completely different way. So, and it's an imaginary concept.
Good stuff.
And yet it's used for really bridging almost like infinity, electricity, and yes.
Yeah. Now let's not forget the Nekuda. Nekuda is not here ideas, to play with ideas. The Nekuda is Lamata Adein Tachlis. That Erein Seif is Lamata Adein Tachlis. What does Lamata Adein Tachlis mean? Don't think it means, he says, Ak. Don't think it means Atzilus. Even though you would think it might be those. Because those realities are already called Mata, in the sense that they are worlds. But that's not the Lamata Adein Tachlis. When you say low to no end, it's low to no end. For this, we introduce the third dimension, which is where separation happens. And you have to understand the Chiddush in this. In Kabbalah, there's an expression. This is an expression from the Ramak, Reb Moshe Cordovero. I'm just going to say it. Yosem mishe'ein aroich. Asiya me'atzilus is ein aroich, atzilus me'ein soif. The distance between atzilus and asiya is infinitely less than the distance between Atzilus and what's higher than Atzilus. The distance between Atzilus and Asiya, which is distant. Asiya is our world. Atzilus is divine. Atzilus is God's world. When I say God's world, I mean a world in which godliness is completely the reality of it. It's not divorced. Says the Ramak, the difference between Asiya and Atzilus is smaller. It's infinite, but it's smaller, as though there's levels of infinity. That's another idea. It's smaller between Atzilus and higher than Atzilus. What he's saying is that you have to understand that Atzilus, even though we call it Elikus and sometimes Ein Sof, but because it's spheres, because it's Kalim, understand what a quantum leap that is from a pre-Kalim reality. Right? But yet, what he's saying here is that Atzilus and the Olamus Ein Sof have that still commonality, despite the infinite difference, that they're both Kalim for Ein Sof, because it's an Olam of Achdus. And as long as there's Achdus, there's oneness, you're always a Keli for Ein Sof. Even though Atzilus is Kalim, and Kalim is L'cha'oida, defies Ein Sof, it's still a Keli for Ein Sof. Because it's the world of Achdus. There's a seamlessness, there's a flow, there's connection, there's still attachment. What happens in Bria, Yitzir Asiya is, over here there's a true quantum leap in the sense that here, the possibility for fragmentation, for separation, for detachment, or the word I was using was disassociation, on all levels of disassociation, that's what's introduced. By Hashem, He's the one who creates this Bria Yitzir Asiya. And that's the Chiddush of the Zohar, Ein Sof Lamata Ad Ein Tachlis, that even as you go down below where there's no Gili of Ein Sof, absolutely not, and they're not a Keli for Ein Sof, because if it would be, it wouldn't be Bria, it wouldn't be Yitzir, it wouldn't be Asiya. There's a sense of detachment. Nonetheless, that too is a revelation of Ein Sof, which needs explanation, of course, but that was the point. What does this mean in a person's life? L'may nafka mina? Just mind games? You threw out another few words. How's it going to help you in your job today? Nuda Bazida, you want to answer that question? So what we're going to see is... Very good. Basically, Einoid Malvada. Good, Einoid Malvada. That always works in Chassidus. That always works. And it's true. Einoid Malvada. And what does that mean? So fine, Einoid Mulvad. Let me. Somebody once said, I remember, Einoid Mulvadi. You understand? It's a very subtle. Einoid Mulvadi could become Einoid Mulvadi. We had a Let's once. I was a bachas. So Chassidus always brings the pasuk Ani Hashem lo yishanisi. He would say Aniva Hashem lo yishanisi. Aniva Hashem lo yishanisi. Ja, ich verstehe Jiddisch. Sanan together. Chet. No, it's a good question. We'll see later that when you say Lamata Ad Ein Tachlis itself, in that itself, there's the way it's Bria, the way it's Yitzira, the way it's Asiya, but still in holiness, in Kedusha. And then there is the way it goes into Klippa. And in Klippa itself, there's levels. And Lamata Ad Ein Tachlis means even in the lowest of the lowest of the low. It's all part of Lamata Ad Ein Tachlis, but that itself, there's going to be a whole system of how low do you really go? Is there a point where you say, you're just too low? Is there a point I look in the mirror and I say, I'm just too low? Which it seems like it. At some point you say, you're just a low life. I'm just a low life. Not just low, but low of low. What they call, the scum of the earth. Rock bottom. Adein Tachlis. Adein Tachlis.
This part of Hashem's wraps on. So it's spirit and condition.
It's so we say Oirin Sof Lamata Adein Tachlis. The result of that is Lo Yidach Mimeno Nidach. That's going to be the last line of this Maamer. That nothing can get lost. The reason nothing can get lost is because nothing is ever lost. Not because you're going to find it, because it was never lost. Because what it really is Oirin Sof Lamata Adein Tachlis. Even though the distortions can be unbelievably painful and wreak havoc, no question. This is not a romanticization of reality on all levels, but it's the ultimate source of tikkun for the world. Right? That's why Geula is embedded in the DNA of Judaism. It's V'ruach Elokim Merachefes al Pnei Hamayim. The Medrash says is Ruach Shel Melech HaMashiach. Not because one day there's going to be a savior who's going to do good things for the world. It's because essentially all of life is a discovery of Ein Sof. And even in the lowest place, you're going to see that it was all Ein Sof. The problem was distortion. The problem was perception. And even perception is part of Lamata Adein Tachlis. And that's the moment where there's a full tikkun. Because when you realize that even your perception is also reality, right? All reality is perception. In fact, there's no reality outside of perception. When you realize even the perception was the Ein Sof trying to make sense of itself, so then it's not like the evil has to be transformed. You realize the whole negativity was just a misinterpretation. The misinterpretation itself was a misinterpretation. And that's redemption. In our own lives, what it means is that there's really no bad parts. That's what we're going to be learning here. When I say no bad parts, of course there's bad parts. You know what I wanted to do yesterday? Oh, you know what I did yesterday? Forget about what I wanted to do. What I did? What do you mean no bad parts? So you have to be careful. Of course, a person can be very, very destructive. And a person could be very, very dysfunctional. And we can have inside of us very, very toxic and dysfunctional and destructive forces. We call it the Yetzer Hara, right? The evil inclination. But in the ultimate equation, we talk about the transformation of everything. How does that happen? Not because one day God is going to come with atomic bombs and blow up the Yetzer Hara and nuke the Yetzer Hara. So if the Yetzer Hara is nuked, there'll only be a Yetzer Tov. That's a very polarized vision of reality. What happens is we'll learn the pnimius of the Yetzer Hara, the real pnimius. Even in the lowest places, the Ein Sof is fully present there. I have to open myself up to it. And that means that's what he says in the beginning of the Maamer, Hashem put his life on the line. Because when you go to those places, it's painful. If I go to a place where I can be hijacked and abducted and manipulated and exploited to the opposite of who I am, and I'm going to let it happen, and I'm not going to run away. You know how painful that is? Why do we disassociate? Why? Pain. I'm not going to stay here. I'm not staying here. To stay here, that's pshat ima yanoichi b'tzara. It doesn't mean ima yanoichi b'tzara is wherever you are, God builds bleachers, he gets a seat, he buys a ticket, he gets it, and he watches it. That's not what ima yanoichi b'tzara means. Ima yanoichi b'tzara means Hashem says, wherever you are, I'm here, I didn't run away, I'm going to watch it. I have a screen. I have a screen in Atzilus, I see everything. Not only that, I'll feel your pain. I'll comfort you. That's all true, avada. But ima yanoichi b'tzara here means something much deeper. Hashoichin itam b'soich tu moisam doesn't mean even though you're tamei, I'm still calling myself your father. I'm not disconnected. It's much deeper than that. It's that the tzara itself is me. Ima yanoichi b'tzara means the experience itself is me. I'm not just watching it. The Ein Sof Lamata Adein Tachlis means it's the Ein Sof itself that's so to speak being hijacked and manipulated and is so vulnerable and is going through that journey.
Isn't that the family from learning is symptom is
Avada. That's true. It goes back to the question of symptom kipshuta, symptom not kipshuta. You're right. Al Piteris Abal Shem Tiv, the Achdus is so profound that there's no separation. But that also means that the hope is not just there's hope that you will go to a good place. It's much deeper than that. The hope is already right now. You just have to unburden and open up the reality of what's happening. So it's a very deep paradigm shift. And today, today, like everything, it opens up in the Baal Shem Tov, the Alter Rebbe, they opened up the Oyer, and then the world ultimately receives it. In the new systems of recent years of psychology, internal family systems, for example, is a model, and other models, it's going more and more to this nekuda, where it's not, exposing you to your evil, or teaching you how to ignore parts of yourself, or to deal with parts of yourself, or to fight parts of yourself, which all have a place. It's all iskafia. But it's really learning that everything you thought was so bad and negative was really Ein Sof Lamata Den Tachlis. And that's unbelievable. Because it shows how deep the goodness is, the Koyach HaTov. It's easier said than done because it's scary, it's darkness. But even the darkness is Ein Sof. Like it says in Tehillim, Im Esak Shamayim Shamata, Vatzia Sha'ol Hineka. The Alter Rebbe's son was the Mittler Rebbe, so there was once a younger man who came to him because he, difficult, spiritual challenges he had. It was in Yanim of Chatas No'urim, things within the intimate realm of a person's life. And he opened up to the Mittler Rebbe. The Mittler Rebbe rolled up his sleeve, and he showed him that his skin was shriveled. It was like tzafad oirei al atzmai, is the expression. His skin was shriveled up.
Goosebumps.
Not goosebumps, like skin like dried, like a little emaciated. And he looks at him and he said, das is gekommen von dein Chatas Norim. This came from from what happened by you. So the Rebbe, the Lubavitch Rebbe, said over the story. Actually, in the first Basi Lagan, he said over the story, he was crying.
Because he told him or before, like he had it before.
No, he had it. He said, this is because of what you...
Not while you told me. Like, just like
You can't dry up your skin in the middle of a conversation. It'll be hard. Something happened over there. It happens over the years. So at first glance, it's very strange. Somebody's coming, confessing, wants a tikkun. What do? You encourage them. You give them a derech tshuva. I mean, hareisa derech tshuva, right? Like we say in the Ila, ad yoy moisei techakaloi. God waits. Encourage him. Give him a derech. It says more guilt now. Oh, you destroyed me too. So the Rebbe said it was punk farket. What the Mittler Rebbe was telling him is, don't think you were ever alone. I was right there with you. I wasn't your Rebbe only when you showed up in full spiritual, robust posture. I was your Rebbe even in the darkest places. Ich bin dort gewesen. Here, it's on my skin. What does that mean? That means I'm not staying there, so you're also not staying there. If I was there, what do they say in Breslau from Reb Nachman? Im ata ma'amin shata yachol lekalkel, tamin shata yachol letaken, right? If you think you could destroy the world, so then believe you could build the world. You're not just a killer. If you could destroy so many people, so you can also build so many people. I was there with you. Once you know I was there with you, then we're going up. I'm not staying there, so you're also not staying there. Don't think I detached. It's the deepest form of empathy. The deepest form of empathy is not saying, I'm sorry, I feel bad. That's beautiful. The deepest form of empathy is, can you be there with me? Achdus. And that's hard. I'm ready to be nice. I'm a nice person. I'm a gentleman. I won't even be judgmental, which is a nice madrega. It's not nice madrega not to be judgmental. But that's not the vart. That's not the vart. Can you be there with me? That's where all healing comes from. Emes? Reb Moshe Zev. Here are big therapists. It's true. You can try it out, you'll see. Try it out, you'll see. I know a person, he had a crazy, crazy childhood. Unbelievable, like Shiva Meduri Gehenim, emotionally, sexually, physically. And we're learning here that I wanted to say it messed him up. We're learning here that you can't get messed up, but it, at least on some level of reality, it messed him up very badly. And he told me there was somebody in his life at some point. He went through a process of discovery and healing, but still he struggled a lot because it's deep issues like we spoke about. It's stuff that happens before your eye is formed. So somebody messed with you before you were congealed. So it's very toxic. It's very dangerous. You understand? He was messed with before he had identity. So there was nobody to hold on to anything. There's no keli. You understand? There was no keli. If there's no keli, so you don't know who you are. Your trauma, it's all the same thing. He said there was once a person in his life, somebody close to him, who looked him in the eyes. And I asked him, what was the moment of healing for you? Like, not healing, but transformation. Somebody looked him in the eyes. Somebody who knew him very well and knew the whole story. And that person was like crying. And the person said, I am so sorry for what you went through. You would think simple words, right? But they were genuine. And for this person, almost in a moment, I'm not going to say it undid, that would be stupid and not true, but it brought so much comfort and dignity to his life. What did the person do? What did the person do? He was not alone. They went into that place with him. It wasn't an explanation, it wasn't a pathway forward. Because the soul knows everything. The soul knows how to heal. The soul knows how to heal. But it's eclipsed. I'm in isolation, I'm alone. So that connection, that attachment, that deep relational energy, it allowed the person to see themselves from a different perspective. Yeah. Why can't he do it to himself? Him saying it to himself for 20 years won't be the same. Why not? Could you answer that question? Why, if I say that to myself for 20 years, it doesn't have the power of that person telling it to me? Huh?
You need a self to say it to yourself.
Right. Because I don't believe me. That's part of it. I don't believe me. When I say, I'm sorry, right? Which eye is saying I'm sorry? The eye that doesn't exist. Thank you, you don't even exist. Who are you to tell me I'm sorry? But the other person, right? That's like a real self. It makes that's what the Mittler Rebbe was telling him. You see this? Don't think I was detached. It wasn't now feel more guilty. It was I'm betachlis hayis kashrus, betachlis hayis achdus. Huh? He showed it on his skin. He didn't have to mean it. The Rebbe said it over the first Basi Lagani, Tafshin Yad Aleph. He was trying to bring out what it means connection. What it means connection. And he said, Dafke the Mittler Rebbe was like a neshama. He was kulei alakus. He was not. He didn't know what service. He was complete. And he said, but this didn't. When he connected to his students, to his chassidim, to his talmidim, this was the level of connection. That's the story. When the Mittler Rebbe was learning and a baby fell out of the crib and it was his own baby, he didn't hear. And the Alter Rebbe was on a higher floor and he came down, he picked up the baby and then he gave him a few weeks later, a few days later, he told him that if you're learning and you don't hear the Kol Yeled Boicha, so something is wrong in the learning. He didn't say even when you're learning you have to hear a baby crying. He said he said much more. If you're learning and because of that you don't hear a child weeping, there's something missing in the learning. His father trained him. You hear the word from the Alter Rebbe. You could say you have to be a mensch. Don't go run away. That's not what he said. He said "Se felt up is in the Torah." Usually you would say it's good Torah. If you don't hear a baby crying, it means you're learning well, right? The Alter Rebbe said superficially, yeah, it means you're an intellectual. But really, there's something missing in the Torah. If the Torah causes you not to hear a child crying, something is not... if there would be the lekus in the Torah, it wouldn't only be oilamus in Torah. If there would be the lekus in Torah, you would hear the baby crying. I think that story captures a very, very fundamental idea of Torah Sabasham. Which Torah are you connecting to? You understand? Is it the Torah of connection, or it's the Torah of I'm going to become a genius and better than everybody else? Then it's already a fake Torah. Like the Gemara says, it's not always Sam Chayim. Was sagt ihr? Have to remind me. Yeah, I said over, when the Rebbe said over the story, he said that he heard from his father-in-law that the Alter Rebbe lived on the higher floor, up the second floor, and the Mittler Rebbe lived on the lower floor. And the baby fell down. So he said, why did he have to say that? Just to part? So he said, there's a diuk here. It says in Zohar, there's two levels of Achdus Hashem, Yechuda Tata and Yechuda Ilah. The lower level of unity and the higher level of unity. Right? So he said, Alter Rebbe had gewohnt auf dem höchsten Stock. He lived on the higher floors. Yechuda Ilah. Shalishim. Tachtiyim, Shneim, Shlishim. Very good. Tachtiyim, Shneim, Shlishim. That's it. Yechuda Ilah. And Afal Pikein. He heard the Kol Yalad Boicha. The Mittler Rebbe didn't. And it's not Afal Pikein, it's because of that. Like the Maisa with Yom Kippur. You know the Maisa Yom Kippur, middle of Kol Nidre. And Liyajne was in Kol Nidre, in the middle of davening with his talis, and suddenly in the middle of Kol Nidre, everybody is very serious. He took off his talis, he took off his kittel, and he left shul. You don't know the Maisa. It's a hafla de Kamaisa. He left shul, and at the end of the city, at the end of the shtetl, Liyajne, it's a town in Belarus, you could visit it. There's nothing left there, the Nazis killed everybody, but Liyajne, it's still there. At the end of the shtetl, he went, there was a yoledis, there was a woman, a mother who gave birth a few days before. And it was the night of Kol Nidris. Everybody wanted to go to shul, Yom Kippur. People want to go to shul. So they left her alone with the baby. And she was in a very difficult situation. The baby was crying and she got sick. There was nobody there to help her. And the Alter Rebbe on Yom Kippur, he took wood, he chopped it up, he put it in the fireplace, he lit a fire, and he cooked a yoich, a soup. And he fed the mother so she could nurse the baby. And she went out miklal sakana, she went out from danger. And then he went back to shul. So the Rebbe asked, he said, this is what he heard. This is the story, he heard it from his father-in-law. So he said, what's the chiddush of the story? The Gemara says, mitzvah begadol, pikuach nefesh, it's a mitzvah. You don't tell a child, you go help him. It's a mitzvah begadol. Because you don't want in a further situation, you could say, we need a child, we need somebody else. Pikuach nefesh is doicha. So the Alter Rebbe was the gadol, so he went himself. He says that's not the chiddush of the story. The chiddush of the story is that on Yom Kippur, in the talis, in the middle of Kol Nidre, hatte der filth, he felt the pain of the elders. He heard the baby cry. Huh? Of course. No, gadol. And there's a reason for it. It says in halacha because you don't want that the next time. Even, yeah. I know what mitzvah begadol means. No, I meant great in stature, because you shouldn't think that next time, if there's only he's there, he's not allowed to do it. So even when other people are there, but that's what pashtus. On a deeper level, mitzvah begadol means the more gadol you are, the more you feel it. So the more you feel the obligation. And all this brings out the nekuda that Oirin Seif Lamata de Tachlis is a connection that is so profound that it's not just I'm here, but it's completely one. It's not just I'm here, but this is me. This becomes me. God allows himself to be defined by Lamata Adein Tachlis. That's the ultimate paradox. Kalim is not the ultimate paradox. Because Kela means structure, but I'm a vessel. I'm a vessel. I want to be a vessel. I want to contain you. I know that containers are brutal because they limit, but I want to limit you. I want to be here. That's Kalim. So that God allows himself to be defined by Kalim. Okay, he says, Ein ze Pella. It's not the Pella. That's not the Pella. That I allow myself to be defined by Lamata Adein Tachlis, by Pirud, by the separation. That's the Pella. That I allow myself to be defined by structure, it's hard. And the Ramak says it's even bigger chiddush than anything else. But it's not the ultimate Pella. Verstehst?
How is Hashem revealed by Chaylit?
The frag is good. But that's the word. That to allow the self to remain present, and not just remain present, like to be defined by that which is opposite of you. That's Mesiras Nefesh. That's the Mesiras Nefesh of Hashem. That's the word. What does Mesiras Nefesh? Mesiras Nefesh means you give up the self. You give up even the image of the self. You give up the self. It's mash l'chayav mineged. You put yourself on the line to the point that he allows himself to become defined by that which is mamish opposite. Not a keli. You're not a keli. He's not a keli.
That's the biggest proof.
And that's why la yidach menu nidach, and that's why nobody's going to be lost, because it's all him, and that's the most vulnerable moment in the relationship. To realize you were there, not only you were there, this is you. Wow, it's very, very emotionally healing. It's very emotional.
Is it not the biggest proof that symptom is not?
This is Teres of Baal Shem Tov, that symptom is not kipshuta. You're right. If you say symptom kipshuta. But that's a word of Chassidus. You can't prove Chassidus from Chassidus. Yeah, this is Teres Chassidus. Tzimtzum shaloi kipshuta is a layer of reality. It's a truth in reality. Every shita in Kabbalah is real. It's true. It's not true or false. Tzimtzum shaloi kipshuta is describing a certain layer of reality. And it's true. You understand? There's a layer of reality where this is how things are experienced. And there's validity to it. Every shita in Kabbalah, every shita in Torah is true. Doesn't mean it's halacha, but it's true. It's emes. It's describing a real frequency. It's a real truth. In the ultimate world, there's no contradictions. There are contradictions, but that's also true. That's also part of it.
Hashem Tov did it by being mevatel his keeper, the only person. So it's hard to know which were Elokus.
There wasn't a question by him.
How do we know? It's very hard to know with this situation. Because Elokus is everywhere, really. We don't see it, but every Trinity is really Elokus.
Somebody once asked Al Rebbe, what's the difference between a maskil and an oived in Atzilus? A maskil means a philosopher in godliness. An oived is somebody who works on themselves, who internalizes it. So he said, what's the difference of maskil and oived in Atzilus? So he said, haben a geschmack in Atzitza, oder haben a geschmack in Teuvet Tanayiden. The rest? Haben a geschmack in Atzitza. It says in Zoya that the tzitzis, the four corners as the Merkava, the four parts of the Merkava. Pnei Aryeh, Pnei Shor, Pnei Adam, Pnei Nesher, the Dalet tzitzis. Haben a geschmack in Atzitza, that's Haskalah. Or the haben a geschmack in Teuvet Tanayiden, in being there for somebody, that's Avodah. The Alter Rebbe. If you don't understand what Ein Sof is, it's not such a chiddush. If you understand what Ein Sof is, it's the ultimate chiddush. I thought I'm going to give today a minute introduction and we're going to go right into the text. But Now, I didn't really explain anything today. I'm just acknowledging that. Right? No, what? Okay, thank you for agreeing. I'm saying I didn't really explain anything. Like, it's beautiful words. Doesn't mean I'm there, it means it's me. I'm allowing myself to be defined by that. But I want you to be taifas the chidushim here, the chidushim here. Not I'm here, which is also very big. To be present is big, but it's much deeper. I'm allowing myself to be defined by this. I'm being transformed by what's happening. I'm becoming a new reality which is completely disassociated from me. Does anybody know that pain? Now, what does this mean in people's lives? It means that the soul does the same thing. When you go into a place where you have to detach yourself from yourself, and you know why you have to do that? Because it's too painful to stay yourself. Who went in over there? So you think, in psychology they'll tell you it was a fake self. It was a fake self that detached from the real self. You became a shell of a person. Like a child who went through a lot of abuse, they disassociate. So the abuse is now only on the shell. So myself is in exile because I can't feel the pain. What we're saying here is something much deeper happened. The real core was right there. Even in the fake self that became something else, the I doesn't leave because the pain in that is very, very deep because detachment is safety. God says, no, I don't do that. I'm going into the war zone. What does it mean, a war zone? A war zone means not I'm going to watch you, I'm going to be you. But what does that really mean? That really means that you were never, ever detached. You were never, ever, ever detached. You were always connected with everything. The detachment itself is a vocabulary that is part of the Lamata Adein Tachlis, which is also an expression of Ein Sof, the way it handles its reality in Lamata Adein Tachlis, but really we're going to be Megala the Ein Sof there. If we can experience this, which is the hardest part, we have to understand it and we have to experience it. Understanding is important, but experiencing is where things happen. If we can experience this. It's very vulnerable, because this means I have to give up even on the fact that I'm a victim. And we don't always want to do that. Sometimes the hardest thing is to say, I'm not a victim, I'm healthy. People don't like that always. No, I'm messed up. It's almost like a badge of honor, Baruch Hashem, I'm messed up, I'm traumatized, I'm going to be in therapy, la'olam vad, till bias goyal tzedek v'ad b'chlal, even Mashiach won't heal me. It's almost like a certain identity. To give up on that is not so easy. That's also an obsession. I'm sick, I'm dysfunctional. Ich bin am Shugana. It's also a ticket almost. Like I'm having a bad day. Of course. Well, what do you expect? You know what I went through? Of course. I should have a bad week. I have a bad year. In a way, it becomes an achrayus also. If in a good way, an achrayus. In other words, you're whole. You're not sick. You just have to see it that way. Okay, I just want to learn one paragraph because I don't want to fall too behind. It'll be mamish like 5-6 minutes and then we'll conclude. Be'ezer Hashem, we'll learn also Sunday morning because I want to try to finish the Maamer. Yud Shvat is on Wednesday, so we'll learn also Sunday morning Bli Neder at 8, like this past Sunday as well. But I want to learn one paragraph here. We're on the bottom of page Yud Gimel. Seif Gimel. The bottom of page Yud Gimel in this contrast, Seif Gimel. By the way, the source sheets are on the website on the yeshiva.net if you want to ever download. Umamshich b'hamaimer sha'inyin dein sef lamata mata den tachlis koy al olam es bri yitzirasiya lefi sha'olam es bia hareyim b'chinas mata. Lamata den tachlis means the worlds of bri yitzirasiya because that's called mata, that's called low. The kelim da atzilas hem kegufel in a shmasa. Mashenkim bri yitzirasiya hem b'chinas levushim. It's what we discussed in the Tuesday Shir. Kalim of Atzilus are like the body to the soul. Bri Yitzir Asiya are like the garments of the body. There's a big difference. Guf and Neshama are two separate things, but they're not. They become one. The miracle of the body is, it is your soul. It's not just a machine in which your soul functions. It's one of the deepest things we have to understand about the body. We look at the body and we're taught, the body has a battery. The battery is called the neshama. That's not the vart. Neshama and guf is a mashal for Atzilus. It's not there's kalim and there's an oir in the keli. No. The keli is the oir. The keli becomes the oir. That's what real keli means. In spirituality, in physicality, a keli means I have a cup and you put the coffee in the cup. In spirituality, it doesn't work that way. When you're a keli for something, it means you are that. You understand? It's not I have a key in the drawer. I have a file in the drawer. The drawer is a keli. It's physically. Spiritually, it's not two separate things. So when you say something is a keli for something, it means I become defined by you. I'm a keli, that's me. But it's I don't become defined by you in your pristine transcendence. Rather, I become defined by you the way I can define you. And that's the power of Keli. Keli is the way I become you, but the way I could become you, which is not you. It's only how much I could become you. Like the eye is a Keli for vision, but what can I see? I can't see everything that's available, that's out there. I could see whatever my retina, right, has the eye has, I don't know, millions of sensors to be able to sense, right, and access, and the brain interprets, and that's what I could see. So Keli is the oir, but it's the way the oir is experienced through the Keli, which is not the oir in its pristine essence. That's the lamata of Atzilus, but it's one. And that's the beauty of Guf. We talk about the wisdom of the body. The body knows the score. The body knows everything. Why? Who made the body such a genius? How does every cell know everything? The answer is, the miracle of life is that the body becomes the soul. The soul becomes one with the body. Mipsari echzelika. That's why mipsari echzelika. The body is not a piece of dead flesh and you put in a Duracell battery, right, for 80 years, for 100 years, so the body now is making noise. That's not a guf. Everywhere. The definition of keli is that it becomes the oir. It's the way the oir is channeled through the keli. When you play a musical note, right, the musical note is the keli, but it's the music.
But what was before the oir? How has this become the keli? What was before?
There's an expression in Eitz Chaim. Mehis avos ha'oir nasak mehis avos. Hey sof ayin vav sof. It's brought in Tanya Lamed Ches. Mehis avos are from the thickness, from the density of oir, the kelim are formed. Kelim are formed from oir becoming dense. The more dense the oir becomes, the more the keli is oir. It's the transformation of oir in a particular structure. That's what guf is. Guf is neshama. It's the way the neshama is experienced through the structure of the body with its limits. But the guf becomes the neshama. The guf itself is alive. It's not the soul is in the body. The guf is alive. The guf becomes a davar chai. It's not separable anymore. It's not separate anymore. That's why they deny the soul. Why do they deny the soul? They deny the soul because they say there's no soul. No, because the soul became so much connected and fused with the body that the body allows you to deny the soul. The soul did such a good job that you could deny it. Right? Like somebody once said, they were learning Gemara. He says, the Gemara is so clear. Yeah, what do you need Rashi? Rashi did such a good job, you think you don't need. The best job you can do is when somebody thinks they don't need you. Who's the best parent in the world? The parent that when the child grows up, he can be really independent. That's a good parent. You did such a good job, I don't need you. Like in Chelim they said, right? The moon is much more important than the sun because the sun shines when you don't need it. It's daytime, who needs it? You don't get the joke. The neshama does such a good job on the guf doesn't need it. The guf doesn't need it. The kelim of Atzilus, which is kelim for Ein Sof, is like the guf to the neshama. That's exactly what it's saying. Which is a gewaldige chiddush that the neshama becomes guf, because the neshama is infinite and the guf is finite. My vision is now coming through my eyes. My hearing is coming through my awareness is coming through my physical brain. I can't function any other way. After a person passes, the neshama's koiches are not processed through the guf. But the difference of life and death is not just the difference of taking out the battery. The body is transformed. And you see what happens to the body after death? It decomposes. It doesn't have a metzius anymore. It's not just it lives as a stone. It doesn't live as a stone. It's gone. Because once the body is alive, it becomes the neshama. And without it, there's no guf left. It's not like, okay, so let it be a rock. Let it stay in the earth, like earth. It completely decomposed. Sefalirtzich, like shviras haluchas. The luchas are broken. That's why the broken of the luchas is compared to the death of tzaddikim. You have gufim that says there's bodies of tzaddikim stay whole. But that's because of there's something in the guf that's still very much neshamadik. But it's a very unique thing in nature. Bodies decompose, besides the etzem luz. So you understand the word gufel and neshmasa? Today they love saying that there's no soul. The soul is an illusion. The reason you could say that is because of the fusion of the neshama and the guf.
It's much more emistic to say than to say that the body is just a lavush.
Yeah, the body's not. That's because the body's not a lavush. The nervous system is alive. It has everything there. It becomes the neshama. It's a gewaldige Wort. That's why the body knows everything. People know, how does the body know? The body knows everything. The body keeps the score, as the famous book of Van der Kolk. The wisdom of the body. How does the body have such genius? Where did it learn? Which yeshiva? Can I go to that yeshiva? The answer is because the body is really Ein Sof. So that's Atzilus. Bri Yitzir Asiya is like a lavush. The garment is going to be on me my whole life. I may wear this jacket for the rest of my life, but it's not me. Nobody's going to say that. You may see me, if I dress nicely, I'll impress you. You may learn about me from my garments, my wealth, my dignity. People invest a lot in their clothes. So the clothes may be a mirror through which you can see a person, real clothes, but it's not you. And that's what happens in Bri Yitzir Asiya. In Atzilus, everything is elikus. Even the kelim are elikus. It's like the guf with the neshama. Bri Yitzir Asiya is kevayachal Hashem dressing up in a lavush. In other words, there's like a disconnect. So you could grab the lavush and detach it from the person. That's the chiddush. The world of separateness emerges. In other words, the world outside of Ein Sof, outside of infinity. You understand that transformation is everything. So the gap between Atzilus, Bri Yitzir Asiya is a real moment of transcendental trauma. I had to use that word because there's a 1.1 million definitions for trauma with capital T. But probably one of the most potent and relevant is separation, real separation. There's no cohesive story anymore. The I has been broken into 1,000 pieces, shattered into 1,000 pieces. I can have a lot of pain. I can have sadness. I can experience a difficult life. But there's a story, there's a cohesive self. That's a keli for everything. It's a keli, you're still a keli. Pirud means, now there's a new reality that's not me. I don't know who's me. I may not even know the me. And that's a different quality, and you become a different type of person. You could start crying when you think about the leap. Where does that begin in Elikus? That's the leap of Atzilus to Bria. What do they say in English? You become a shell of yourself. What does a shell mean? You're a lavush. Where are you? I don't know. Here, I have your jacket. I have you, but you're not here. It's like a lavush. It's mamash a lavush. Your teuf is the vart. There's no keli anymore. There's a new reality now, a disconnect. And that's where isolation comes in. There's a disconnect from the self. There's a self that's disconnect from the self. But it lives. It lives. What does it live off? It lives off something that's not the self. It's very powerful. Where does that come from in Kedusha? Everything has a source. This is the difference between Atzilus and Bria Yitzirasi. So he says, it says in Pasach Eliyahu, that's Zohar, Hagdama to Tekuni Zer. The Kama Levushin Tkinas line. God created many garments. The Koyal Bria Yitzirasi Shem Levushim Bilvad Lo'ira Kelim Datzilus. They become levushim for the light of Kalim. The Kalim are there, the Oidus are there, but they're levushim, they're garments. There's no Bria without Oir, there's no Bria without Kali. But instead of calling them a Kali for the Oir, you call them a levush for the Oir, a garment for the Oir. Now Bria is still a very functional world, it's a very holy world. Yitzir is a good world. Asiya can become toxic. But it begins, there's already a beginning, something called outside of me. So let's put it this way. Let's say Hashem would have stopped creation by Atzilus. After Atzilus, he would say, Atkan! You know, the Big Bang is expanding universe, expands. The Gemara says in Chagiga, why is Hashem called Shaddai, Shin Daled Yud? Because when he created the world, right, it's interesting because it says Mamash in Gemara, the universe was stretching, and then Hashem said, Die! Stop! Because if you go a little more, they say the Big Bang would have gone a little faster, even off by a millisecond, where we would be. Everything would just explode a second after creation. So there had to be the die, stop! Or at least slow down, stop. So there was a stop. Because you would just go into nothingness, oblivion. It had to, on the one hand, it had to expand, because if there would be no expansion, it would become French toast. It would crunch up in the heat, right? And the other hand, it couldn't expand too much, because then it would just be scattered. So Alpi Pnimius, it's very deep. There had to be the expansion. There had to be Hishtalshalus, because if not, everything would get burnt up in Ein Sof. But if there's too much, you're just left without connection. So if God would have stopped the world after Atzilus, if he would have said die a little earlier, there would be no ability for being disconnected. There would be an ability for Kalim, but not for disconnect. You understand? Because Kalim, structure, but still ain't safe. In Bria started the ability for disconnect. That's the Chiddush of Bria. Period. You're a lavush. There's something outside that's containing my life. Now understand how deep this is. In Bria there's no trauma. Bria is godly. Bria is Einoid Mulvadai. But it's a lavush that's Teufus Alakus. The vocabulary of disconnect was introduced. I get you. It's beautiful. But I get you. I'm not a Keli anymore. I'm a lavush. I get Ein Sof. That's Bria. It's moidedik. It's not like in Bria Bria is not evil. Bria is holy. But what's holy? You know who's in Bria? Malachim, Neshamas, good guys. Bria is a very high world. But so why does it have such bad rap? Because over there, what's the concept? The concept is not Keli, it's Lavush. I dress up the Ein Sof. I experience the Ein Sof. So you started to use words that are ultimately based on disassociation, that could become disassociation. What does that mean in a person's life? The beginning, the genesis of the breakdown of reality is not in dysfunction. That's where it comes out. It's in the way I perceive the I as a lavush for Ein Sof rather than Ein Sof. That's where it happens. And that's why that's where the healing is. Trauma doesn't begin in abuse. That's when it's materialized. It begins because the I is a lavush. It's not a keli. So there's no achdus. So you're a lavush for Ein Sof, and you are a despicable piece of garbage. That's what happens in Asiya. But the leap started with the change from keli to lavush. So the healing is when I go from lavush back to keli, and then from keli back to oir. And that's oilamus, neshamus, elikus. Oilamus is separate. From separateness I go back to neshamus, which is a keli. And from keli I go back to oir, which is elikus, which is beyond keli. The leap from lavush to keli is very profound, because lavush means I'm dressing you up, and keli is oneness. Every one of these stages exists in the human psyche. What we're learning really here is a map of the human psyche, using the language of Kabbalah and Chassidus. It's just a map. You could map out in the psyche pre-symptom, post-symptom, Ak, Atzilus, Bria, Yitzir, Asiya. In Asiya itself, all the levels. And the question is which frequency you're living with right now. So the Baal Shem Tov says, this was the Baal Shem Tov's revolutionary idea. At every moment of your life, look at your frequency and give it a diagnosis to understand where you are and if you're getting stuck. And then with ease, allow yourself to move from oilamus to neshamas talikus. The Chevra Teufus, huh?
Every time we say something, we take this a little bit more. But we know that by the end of the day, we don't get that's not.
That's good. If I feel that I'm Teufus everything, then probably Teufus nothing. Rabbi Meir Shapiro, the founder of Daf Yomi, once came to America to fundraise. So he got up at a shul's packed. Rabbi Meir Shapiro was a brilliant orator and a gaon, and a very special man. He was the Rav of Lublin, And he came in America and he gave a beautiful speech. The shul was packed. He gave a shir, a pilpul, for an hour or 2 hours. He came to fundraise for his yeshiva. And when he finished, people came over, Yeshikoyach. At the end, there was a yid waiting for him. He walks over at the end. He says, Rebbe, I sat here for 2 hours. Ich nicht verstanden kein Wort. I didn't understand a word you said. But you're probably here for a good cause, for your yeshiva. So here's a check. And he gave him a very nice check. He looks at him, he says, Du bist der Einzige, was hat verstanden. You're the only one who understood. Verstehst? But there's a deep lesson in this. One nekuda in avoda is worth 100 years of Haskalah. One nekuda in which something translates into an actual emotional, behavioral result is worth more than understanding these things, because not understanding it is very powerful, but that's where it really there was the einzige was hat verstanden, you know what I mean, when I can go to the bank. If today when your child speaks to you, right, you're triggered, forgive me for bringing it down to a very very simple level, but you're triggered. You're really, really triggered. And you want to blow up, which means maybe scream or even run away. You're not going to say anything, but you lose it.
Rabbi Jacobson.
Huh?
The Rabbi Jacobson show. In the morning, the Rabbi Jacobson show.
Yeah, whatever it is, whatever the escape is, it could be me, it could be somebody else, it could be even God himself, whatever, but it's an escape. And it's very, very hard. It's real. It's real. It's as real as it gets. Your body is screaming. So what would the Baal Shem Tov tell you at that moment? Not to deny the reality. You were triggered. You're not a robot. You're not a computer. Mayach Shalt Lalev doesn't mean you deny your emotions. But in a very, very beautiful and loving way, he would say, now, let's go from Oilamis to the Shamas, Talakus. What does that mean? It means I experienced an I that is very, very fragile, that is very, very, very angry, that is very, very vulnerable, that is very dependent, that is very scared. I'm scared about my kid, I'm scared about my house, and I'm overwhelmed. I get it. Now can you also feel that and listen to yourself and identify a part of you that is in a place not of levushim, but of kalim. In other words, if I can really experience myself now as part of Ein Sof, how would I react? But I'm not. I'm angry. I get it. A part of me is in a place of pirud. Fine. That's part of the life. God did that. It's not your fault. But that's what it means at every moment. This consciousness is not. My point is, don't think this is abstract ideas that are made for neshamas of Atzilus, and for people who have time to learn Kabbalah and Chassidus and all these fancy madregas. It's the oxygen of how to live in a turbulent world and in a turbulent psyche, and really comfortably navigate Oilamis neshamas alakus tachtiyim shniyim ushlishim. Okay, my dear friends, have a beautiful day. We're here Shabbos. The next shir in this Maamer will be Sunday morning, 8 o'clock, right here. Everybody is invited. And thank you for gracing us with your presence. Give me one moment. A minute, hello. What do you say? Yeah, I'm coming. I finished the shir. Okay, I'll see you in a few minutes. You want?
What level is Basi Lagani?
This is Basi Lagani.
What level? Is it before the symptom?
Oh, Basi Lagani.
Is that?
Basi Lagani tried to bring it all together. That was the Rebbe's whole inyan. He's trying to heal the world.
Where is it?
That's why the Rebbe was into Mashiach. What's Mashiach? The Tikkun.
But that's Ratzon? Hashem's Ratzon before even...
Hashem wanted this world to be a Dir B'Tachtonim. For this, he gives all the treasures. What's the deepest treasure he gives? Ein Sof. To where? To the soldiers. But it's not just he gives the treasures. He says he puts himself on the line. Where does he put himself on the line? That's what the Maamer is explaining. And because he puts himself on the line, therefore, la yidach menu nidach. Nobody will get lost.
So it's way down.
Nobody will get lost. Yeah.
I don't hear the baby cry yet.
It's that, it's very hard. This Maamer is a war on cynicism. The Maamer is a declaration of war on cynicism. Huh? Base for cynicism is ciniyut, cynish.
May I
Yeah.
ask for a bracha?
Sure.
I haven't heard the baby cry yet. I'm here because my baby, my daughter, imminently is going to give birth.
Oh wow.
And I would love to have a bracha.
Should be b'shat tova mutzlachas, an easy and smooth and a healthy child.
Sorrow. Thank you.
Yes. Should all be smooth and easy in the right time, and a healthy baby and a healthy mother,
Amen.
and a healthy grandfather.
Amen.
Gewaldig.
And a healthy Rabbi.
Be only simchas in the family. Dank für ein Kommen. Ist verstanden? You were typhus, everything? Okay.
I'm very honest. I was going to say it originally.
Why would we call it kids that Goyim don't have neshamas? And if so, if it really is that, how does their body? What is our theory to their body?
Goyim have neshamas. It says clearly Goyim have neshamas. So Tosfos.
It says that like Yechida and Chaya that
Goyim have neshamas. It says clearly in Tosfos. The question is, what type of neshama? There's different type of souls. Yeah, it's not the type of a Jewish soul, but a Goy has a soul. There's an expression in Rambam and Hilchos Shmita v'Yovel at the end. Lo yishevet Levi belvad, ela kol ish v'ish mikol boy olam asher nodva rucha yosoi libadel. Oh, beautiful Rambam that he speaks about not only Shevet Levi but every person of the world, even non-Jews. That end of Hilchos Shmita v'Yovel that dedicates their life to Hashem. Areizin is Kaddish Kodesh Kodashim. V'yiyah Hashem Chelkoi v'Goyrola, etc. Kodesh Kodashim. About every person, Jew and non-Jew. Yes, there's different types of souls. There's different shlichas, different avodah, different mitzvahs, but every person has a soul. It says Chaviv Adam. It says in Pirkei Avos, Chaviv Adam Shenivra B'Tselem. Person is precious. He was created in the image of Hashem. Every person. Not only that, the Arizal says, and it's brought in Shara Yichud V'Emunah and Tanya, that everything has a soul. The Arizal says everything has a soul. The Alter Rebbe says that's the Asara Mamar, is the divine energy that gives it life, is the soul. And the meaning of that is, yeah, even an animal has a soul. He says even a rock, an Evan has a soul. Even an Evan, and today we know in physics, even in a rock you have a whole universe, a whole atomic structure and subatomic structure. Yeah. It can't have in the Maamer. Basi Lagani Tovshin Yud Aleph. The Rebbe did sell to Meis. Is it gehad with the Rebbe did sell? For was weint, ja? Okay, ja. Aber den nicht. Nein, sag's gut. Sag's gut, aber das ist a Rebbe. A Rebbe means I don't detach. Nein, es ist nicht da. Avade, das... The middle Rebbe, he says, I'm so connected to you that when you fell, I also fell. Das ist das. Yeah.
Ist du eine Sache, als Zadig, was wird nicht ausgegangen, der Welt, nicht connected sein, der hartige Rebbe, was wird nicht connected, der Welt, ist klar, der nicht connected, ist Pshat ist, das ist Atanai, ist Pshat ist, das Haine von der Schumme Klur ist, das Tzadikim leiden von dort, das Rege.
Das ist nicht Ingen, was Tzadikim leiden von der Dar. Das ist ein individueller Hiskashrus von der Rebbe zu Chassid.
Aber wenn beide haben geholt, wird verstanden. Also nur der Rebbe hat es verstanden.
Amol, the cup filled the pain mehr wie die andere Chalakim. Is the Rebbe gefüllt a viele mehr wie ihm. So schaust du schon Chasam Sofer, du weißt doch Chasam Sofer. So he says, why are you allowed to go ask a Rebbe for a bracha? Or ask him to daven for you? So whole machloek is malachi rachem and if you shas malachim, daven directly. So he says, you're going to Rebbe, you're not going to somebody else. You're going to your own head. He says, you're allowed to ask your head to daven to you. He says, fakert, your head is the one. He says, the head feels the pain more than the finger. The head feels the pain. That's what the Chasam Sofer writes. If you're going to a dead person, you take a right. When you're going to... If you're going to a dead person, you're right. When you're going to the oil of a tzaddik, you're not going to a dead person. The Gemara says in Brachas, tzaddikim af b'sosam kroyim chayim. It's a Gemara in Brachas, daf Yud Zayin. Tzaddikim af b'sosam kroyim chayim. Gemara says in Tainis daf Hey, Yaakov Avinu loy meis, mazar b'chayim afu b'chayim. Gemara says in Soita daf Yud Gimel, Moshe loy meis. So however you touch these Gemaras, the point is that there's a life that continues even if it's not physical. And the truth is every neshama is alive. Every neshama, yeah. It says that Kalev went to Marsa Machpelah to daven. The place can talk about Derish Shalamesim, all the halachas about it. But you see Lepal and halacha that you're allowed to go to a cave and fakert. It's brought even in Shulchan Aruch, Benegei Elul, before the Shoshana. Shtadchus, yeah. There were people who didn't go. It's true. There were Jews. The Vilna Gaon, yeah. There were Jews who didn't go to Beis HaChaim, yeah. They didn't hold from it. Huh? I know. Huh? No, the worst shit is not to go to Beis HaChaim. But Lepel Mamish, there's Nimnu v'Gamru, most shit is that you could go, and you go. Couldn't say Stadchus from the middle of Rebbe. Yeah, he wrote about the Alter Rebbe. It's couldn't say Stadchus, a lot of arichas about it.
Does Kohanim go to the oil? Kohanim?
At the Rebbe's oil, they have a mechitza of 10 tfachim, so Kohanim can go.
And the door on the floor, there's like one door, and then there's a door, and you go into the cave, right?
Yeah, they made a system. The oil itself, you'll see around the cave where there's a mechitza of 10 tfachim. But also now they made that the path towards it should also have a mechitza through the Beis HaChaim. Yeah, that was built a few years ago.
Rabbi, why here in this part of the Basi is referring to neshamas mostly to be and when you say like going to Alamos to neshamas, we're referring to Atzilus.
We'll see the next year.
Okay.
The next year is going to be about that. Which neshamas are we talking about?
Thank you, Rabbi.
No problem. Atzlache Rabbi. Ja, was macht ihr?